legal weed products are causing grave concern. And it's going to talk about some molecules that we've often talked about here on High at 9 News. So at one time, learning cannabinoids found in weed felt like a task. That's only gotten harder as brands started tearing through Farm Bill loopholes by synthesizing new cannabinoids. The plant is being bent and renamed into gray legalities like THCA and Delta-9, which are just plain old weed, right? The farce takes on darker undertones when considering medical implications of burning and inhaling compounds with little to no understanding about how they affect the brain and how they affect the human body. So two synthetic cannabinoids that are making negative headlines illuminating this worry are HHC, hexahydrocannabinol, and THCO, which is the acetate of THC. So HHC causes severe medical episodes in Europe. Two people in the community of Madrid experienced days of nausea and vomiting after consuming cannabis cookies containing HHC, or hexahydrocannabinol. Brands are synthesizing the compound from CBD, legally grown under the Farm Bill, which is why many are calling it a legal cannabinoid. The illnesses caused the Spanish Agency for Food Safety and Nutrition to issue a recall on March 22nd for cookies in question and HHC gummies that were made in the Czech Republic under the brand Weed Nation. The products had warning labels stating that they aren't to be consumed, but they have the appearance of food that is especially attractive to children. So probably put in counterfeit labels or packaging that made it appear as though it were just regular food. A rapid alert system for food and feed, the RASFF, report states that the patients experienced vertigo, dizziness, and vomiting, uncontrolled vomiting. Wow, that's pretty significant. This isn't the first HHC controversy this year. Many countries outside the U.S. are going head-to-head with the compound. The Malta health minister raised concerns over cannabinoids being both readily available online and in packaging that's attractive to children. Probably got SpongeBob on the label or something like that. Am I dating myself by saying SpongeBob? What's the new cartoons that kids are watching these days? So around the same time, an Irish research paper shared tales of two, this is very interesting, John, HHC-induced psychosis. I can share the paper with you later because I actually pulled the paper. Asking regulators make the compound illegal. The Czech Republic banned the cannabinoid along with HHCO, which if you're following this alphabet soup of nomenclature, HHCO would be basically the acetate of HHC, right? So HHCO and THCP. Now they claim that THCP is hemp-derived, but what I can tell you is that all THCP, without exception, all of it is all synthetically derived because there are no high-yielding THCP cultivars that have been discovered yet. So it was only discovered in a very, very trace amount, and the way that the researchers were able to identify the compound when the Italian group reported this back in 2019 is they synthesized a compound that was spot-on identical with what they found in the plant. So the take-home message from that paper was not only this occurs in cannabis, but if you want to make it, here's a nice synthetic prep that'll teach chemists and non-chemists alike on how to make it. So THCP does not come from hemp, although hemp hustlers will tell you that it does. So THCO, which is the acetate of THC, may not have the effects that people thought. So THC acetate, or THCO acetate, also known as THCO, is created by synthesizing delta-8 tetrahydrocannabinol, or delta-8 THC. So you already know that this is being made from hemp because they're talking delta-8. So you can make the acetate of delta-8, but you could also make the acetate of delta-9. But in this context, they're referring to the acetate of delta-8 THC. Is made by adding acetic anhydride. Well, that's also the same reagent that's used in making heroin. So it's watched. The DEA watches acetic anhydride, so it's probably not a wise idea to go buy a bunch and start making it, unless you want to come onto their radar. The cannabinoid gained popularity in the wake of delta-8 proliferating the hemp market. THCO offered an almost psychedelic effect, or so they thought. New data collected from self-administered survey challenges the efficacy of THCO. Consumers shared their experiences of the compounds in what researchers claim to be the first test on whether THCO actually is psychedelic. Data gathered using some questions from the Mystical Experiences Questionnaire, or MEQ, which has been used to gauge the psychedelic properties of other experiences, was used here. So normal aspects of a psychedelic trip, like an altered sense of time, difficulties concentrating on a particular subject, or issues with short-term memory, were experienced at a low to moderate level amongst these users. The same goes for hallucinations or trippy visuals, things, the walls melting and things moving and stuff like that. Responses remained below the threshold of a mystical experience, and those who had tried true psychedelics scored lower on all MEQ dimensions. So that's interesting. So people who had already tried psychedelics, they know what to expect, and they're able to basically give better data into this questionnaire. The study further illuminates the fact that there's little known about the newly discovered and synthesized cannabinoid compound. Well, I can tell you there's nothing new about THC acetate. THC acetate was first made and reported in the literature in 1941 by a chemist named Wollner, who was at the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which was the precursor to the DEA. So the DEA, or the precursor to the Drug Enforcement Administration, basically published the synthesis of THC acetate and taught the rest of the world on how to make it. Isn't that great? Our tax dollars at work there for you. So certain states have made HHCA and other derivatives illegal, while other products are readily available online. At this point, education is the only way to make sure people smoke good stuff. Friends don't let friends smoke bad weed. Well, in essence, these two compounds have nothing to do with good weed, right? These compounds are chemically derived from CBD, which is derived from hemp, but there's nothing about good weed. So again, I'll go back to what I've always said on High at 9 News, which is that if people have access, unfettered access to high-quality cannabis and cannabis products, these recreational synthetics like HHC and THCO will likely go away. That's what I predict. This is Dr. Mark from Shirley Hall here at St. Michael's College in Colchester, Vermont. That's my story for the day. Have a great weekend, everyone. I'd be interested in what my colleagues have to say about this wonderful story about these two compounds.
HHC. Okay, you're telling us.
Yeah, you know me.
This is
psychedelic? I should also tell the audience that I am the inventor of HHCA. HHCA, which is basically the carboxylated form of HHC, is covered in a patent that I filed a few years ago. And so, yes, I am the father of HHCA. Not that that's related to this story, but
I can't wait to see the
HHCA thermally
decarboxylates
to HHC. So that's how we're related.
I couldn't agree with you more, Dr. Mark. Legalization and further access of the real shit is going to drive away a lot of these derivatives, except when they come from big pharma, like a big business. Because why? Like, where are we seeing all of these counterfeit foodstuffs now coming from? These mega producers, these mega industries are the ones that are putting those out. And next thing you know, like, oh, is this milk that I'm drinking? No, this is counterfeit milk. And where is it coming from? It's coming from these big businesses. I think that the mass reckoning that we are headed towards, where you're just gonna have to legalize it. You're not gonna get rid of the trap. You're not gonna be able to get rid of any of these derivatives. I think it's actually going to shift, and you're gonna have a lot of these trickling in from big industry. That's I think. They want to cut corners, cut costs. They're going to mass produce a lot of these derivatives.
Did I hear you correctly, Dr. Mark? You said that one of these compounds was a THCO or HHC. What is a psychedelic compound? Did you freeze, Dr. Mark? He might have froze. I think he froze on us.
He got taken out by the
that's what he said, that it was psychedelic. But cannabis is psychedelics. It's just a play on words.
I'm not buying.
You can have a psychedelic experience with cannabis.
I don't know. I'm not sure if I believe that part.
Come into our lab, Jason. We'll give you a psychedelic experience on cannabis.
I'm down to try this. I'm down to try this. I'm down to check this out to see if this is possible. I'm totally willing to be a test dummy for the sake of science for you, doctor.
You know what's really interesting about this article is the vomiting. Not that it's good, but it's interesting because it's similar to the effects of cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome.
I was thinking that too.
Maybe something about those synthetics aligns with that cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome.
Well, maybe
we can understand it more.
Maybe it's not THC that causes cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, Adam, at all. Maybe it's just like some random compound that is in cannabis that is causing that. Dr. T.
Or it could be the person too. You know, in Rousseau's paper, he pointed out that there might be some genetic predispositions to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Any thoughts on that, at least, before we go to our last commercial?
I remember the first time someone gave me like a THCO sample, and I think that package sat in my kitchen for 2 years before I threw it away. I never wanted to touch that stuff. So I feel genuinely sorry for the people who seek it out because they are looking for medicine or healing or a good time, and that's all they can find. And then to end up with not even a good experience, but an actually, negative experience, getting violently ill or having being scared from hallucinations. I mean, I feel bad for them and agree with what everyone said. If better access, this wouldn't be an issue. And then back to the psychedelic thing, I think what Dr. Mark said was they did, it was a self-surveyed study. So some people reported feeling psychedelic-like experiences, but those who were experienced with psychedelics already called it less psychedelic than an actual psychedelic experience. So I did appreciate that information about the self-study. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's sad and again, not even that new. I also think it's crazy that it happened in Madrid and that these products are being made in the Czech Republic.
It's probably all the stuff.
The Czech Republic has long been making all kinds of. They've been doing cannabinoid research. Lumir Hanush, who worked in Professor Mishulam's lab, is a Czech national, and as it turns out, a lot of hemp processing is done in the Czech Republic and in Eastern Europe. So in Czechoslovakia, they still do have a lot of the decortication infrastructure to be able to make hemp paper and whatnot. But yeah, there is a lot of sort of this, alternative cannabinoid thing going on in Europe. But, the Czech Republic and other municipalities over there have really sort of reached out to try to put a lid on it. But sorry for dropping out there for a moment. No. I just wanted to say one thing about THC acetate. So from Mishulam's work, if you put an acetate group onto THC and you try to dock it into the CB1 receptor, it doesn't dock too well. So the acetate itself is not a good ligand for the CB1 receptor. But what happens
Dr.
in
Mark.
the brain is is that the acetate actually undergoes a hydrolysis reaction to release THC. So this is known as what's called a prodrug. So prodrugs are substances that we consume, and in the body, they're metabolized to the active form of the drug. And so what that does is when you put the acetate group on the phenolic position of THC, is it just changes the pharmacokinetic profile and how that is metabolized, and it gives a longer onset of activity. But it also, they've claimed that it also provides enhanced penetration through the blood-brain barrier, which is where the CB1 receptors are located in the brain. So there's probably a little bit of both going in there, but I wanted to bring up one other thing, which is that if you dab THC acetate or THCO at very high temperatures, it could generate a degradation product called ketene, which is something that you do not want to be inhaling into your lungs because it's extremely reactive. The ketene itself, if it does decompose from THC acetate at dab rig temperatures or nail temperatures, the ketene will immediately react with moisture in your mouth to make acetic acid. So you may get a sensation of vinegar. It's basically vinegar, which is acetic acid, but there's no way that ketene would actually make it down into the alveoli of the lungs because it would react with moisture in your oral saliva immediately. So anyway, some science on the back end of that story.
Interesting that in the brain there's a no docking zone, Dr. Mark.
Yeah.
And on that, we're going to... Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the CB1 receptor is one of the most prevalent receptors in the human brain, correct, Dr. Talleyrand? And especially in the frontal cortex, which is the most human kind of developed portion of the brain. And that's not a happy accident. And I think that can only be the fact that humans have co-evolved with this plant for millennia. And so we have a receptor that basically is hardwired for it.
Fair enough. We're going to go to our commercial, and we're going to be right back.